Hello, my name is Adam and welcome to the Lead Realm. Thank you for joining me on my journey to paint models of my youth. This channel is both a diary of my progress and also my way of documenting my painting process. In this video, I'm going to be documenting the painting process for my forest goblins. These wonderfully characterful sculpts were created by Kev Adams in the mid-90s for Games Workshop and their Warhammer Fantasy Battle game. I believe they were released around the end of 4th edition and the start of 5th edition for the Orcs and Goblins army. Ever since seeing these models at the time, I have wanted an army of them. Something about the vibrant colours and that Kev Adams style really drew me to them. I start by applying a 50-50 mix of Plague Bearer Flesh and Mantis Warrior Green contrast from Games Workshop. This goes all over the skin of the goblins. The unit I'm tackling here is the two-handed weapon unit, which I'm representing with these models. As mentioned, I mix my own green for this project, and the way I keep track of the levels of highlight is by using the same palette for the entire project. You are looking at over 130 goblins worth of highlights here. Essentially, I'm adding white to the pre-mixed green on this palette until it looks the same as the layers underneath, which in theory tells me I have the same shade. That then gets put on the model, covering less and less with each highlight. The unit that I'm painting today represents the final one for my army, after which I will have a full 2,500 points in 5th edition with a few different options as well. Primarily, I'm a tabletop painter first, focusing on armies rather than display models. So I want things to look as good as possible in units rather than when they are looked at individually. The final highlight contains the most white and is applied mostly on the face and any prominent areas that would provide the most impact when viewed from the tabletop. Once the skin has been completed, I spend a bit of time tidying up any overspill into areas that will eventually have contrast paint applied, just to ensure the contrast looks consistent. Then, using Barl Red, I paint all of the weapon shafts and other bits of wood to really hit home that 90s Warhammer red period style. Each of the units in my Forest Goblin army have their own unique additional colour accent in the form of their feathers and fabric. This gives every unit its own visual identity. For this unit, the colours used are pink and blue. The blue I'm using is Frostheart, with the pink being a mix of Baal Red, White Scar, and just a little bit of contrast medium. This is then applied over the feathers and wet blended where I wanted the colours to mix. I then used a very thin down wash of Black Legion over the white feathers to create some depth. Finally, the feathers are then given a light dry brush of White Scar just to pick out the very fine details. The wood areas previously painted Baal Red were given a single fine line highlight of Uriel Yellow, again to mimic my view of the classic Games Workshop Red era. I often find that during model painting, there is an element of trust the process, where perhaps things look a little bit ugly, and this is definitely that part for these models. I paint the areas of fur, leather and belts in Doomball Brown. Any bone or skulls get a coat of Balor Brown. And finally, any things I want gold metallic are painted in Genna's Gold. Here we are at the midpoint, where every part of the model has had at least one layer of paint. However, there is no separation of colours and no real depth. In order to bring that definition and separation of colour, all of the areas previously painted brown and gold are now given a wash of null oil. Okay, we're on the home stretch now, and I always find that this step, the highlights, really brings the models together. The fur and dark leather sections get a highlight of Doomball brown mixed with Balor brown, followed by one of just Balor brown. The leather belts and bone parts get highlights from Balor brown, with the bone parts getting highlights of Balor brown mixed with Screaming Skull, and then one final one of pure Screaming Skull. The metallic areas get some very minor highlights with Rune Fang steel. These are kept deliberately dark, as I don't want too many prominent metallics on these models, to match the idea that metals are a rare commodity in whatever deep dark forest they live in. Finally, any previously pink areas that weren't dry brush highlighted are given some quick highlights by mixing white into the previous pink paint. The last thing that needs painting is the weapons. I'm not sure exactly what they are made of, but in my mind I was thinking of some sharp stone or perhaps poor quality metal. I start by painting them Administratum Grey, and then add a couple of light washes of brown and null oil. I then highlight up with a mix of Administratum Grey and White Scar, using scratchy brush strokes rather than a traditional edge highlighting method. And that's us now all done with the painting, so it's on to the bases. For this army, I decided to go with some resin cast forest bases, onto which I've added some 3D printed ferns and vines. I painted all of these as a large batch when I was preparing the army, so all I need to do now is pick a base onto which the model fits nicely, remove the model from its cork painting handle, drill a hole in the base, and then glue it down. Off camera, I've given them a couple of coats of gloss varnish and then one of ultra matte to keep them protected during gameplay. Our final step is to add a few grass tufts to really fill out the forest feel. And we're done. Here is the completed unit. A 25 strong block of feisty forest boys, ready to squabble in front of the enemy before running away, but at least they'll look good doing it. I still need to do the movement trays for this army, and like the bases, I will do these all together so that they look consistent. But for now, let's add them to the rest of the army. If you're interested in seeing more pictures of the rest of this army, please feel free to check out my Instagram, which is linked in the description. The keen-eyed among you will have noticed the unpainted wyvern and giant at the back of the cabinet. If you're interested in seeing me paint those in a video, please do let me know in the comments. Thank you for joining me in this video. I hope you've enjoyed watching me paint these little goobers. I would love to hear your thoughts on either my painting, these models, or even the video in general. And I hope you all have a fantastic day.